And it's happened throughout time over and over and over again. There's a lot of these resets. This is a basic part of their strategy that they've used ever since the Tower of Babel.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Who is able to make war with him?
And so I want to read Jasher chapter 7 and verse 35, starting in verse 35. It says, Nimrod went forth at that time, and he assembled all the sons of Cush and their families, about 460 men. And he hired also from some of his friends and acquaintances about 80 men. And he gave them their hire. And he went with them to battle. And when he was on the road, Nimrod strengthened the hearts of the people that went with him. And he said to them, do not fear, neither be alarmed, for all our enemies will be delivered into our hands. And ye may do with them as you please. And all the men that went were about 500, and they fought against their enemies, and they destroyed them, and subdued them. And Nimrod placed standing officers over them in their respective places. And he took some of their children as security, and they were all servants to Nimrod and to his brethren. And Nimrod and all the people that were with him turned homeward. And when Nimrod had joyfully returned from battle after having conquered his enemies, all his brethren together with those who knew him before assembled to make him king over them, and they placed the regal crown upon his head. And he set over his subjects and people, princes, judges, and rulers, as is custom among kings. So it talks about how his journey to the top, how he defeated all of the Japhethites, he defeated all the Semites, and defeated all of the people around him to the point to where he took securities of their families, placed people in charge everywhere he went, and subdued the entire world through that. Now, there's a lot of talk in the scripture about how he did this, about him. In the Bible, it talks about him becoming a mighty man, becoming a Gibberim, right? This is the term, mighty hero of sorts. And in this process, he becomes dominant over the entire world, and he builds this tower.
Well, he was the trendsetter in so many ways. He was the one that was after the flood to initiate the push for the New World Order. And in what he did here, well, we go in, we remove their rulers, we put our rulers in, we impose our religion and our civilization upon them. That's what a reset is.
We have the same beast system, the same beast mentioned in the Beast of Daniel. And Daniel describes this beast. You can read it, Second Esdras. For those of you who aren't familiar with Second Esdras, it could say Second Ezra. Ezra wrote in the Bible. Second Esdras is an apocryphal text. And then the book of Revelation. There's one text in Revelation 17 that mentions another player in this game. So we have the beast in Revelation, or we have the beast in Daniel, we have the beast in Second Esdras, we have the beast in Revelation. But I want to read this about this other entity that is involved in all of this, because there's some clues in here that I want to point out. And it says, and there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her head was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered in great admiration. So on top of this beast that's mentioned in Daniel, in 2nd Esdras, and in Revelation, we have this whore that rides the beast. And not only is she in charge of this beast and these kings for the time period, but she is the one who has committed abominations and caused the kings of the earth to commit abominations, caused them to be drunk on the abominations that she holds in her hand. Revelation 17, this will give us another clue, and it says, And he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So it says this woman is a great city that reigns over the king of the earth. And we get a clue about Babylon reigning over the entire earth when we look at in Genesis and the story of Nimrod. We also get a story of that with Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, all of these kings who at one time were dominant and did control the earth. And they had a knack for doing this. And in fact, they had such a knack, according to the Bible, that they subdued all of the kings. The beast and Babylon are separate, yet the woman has influence and control over the kings. And in turn, the people of the land, in the end, the kings turn on her and destroy her. Revelation 17, and it says, And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. So the word in the Strong's is 3735, which is oros, and it means a mountain. Now I looked at the derivatives of this word and where a lot of words were formed based off of this word in the Greek, and this will blow your mind. I think it blew my mind. The etymology 1 of the word orizio, and I'm not pronouncing that right, but it says to awaken, and the etymology number 2 is guardian or watcher, which caused me to kind of take a real deep look into this idea. Like, why are these hills, why are these words derived from this? We know that a lot of our words derive from certain words because there's a meaning in there. In the Greek, it's no different. In the Latin, it's no different. In the English, it's no different. The Hebrew, it's no different. There's always the reason that they use these words. I wanted to dig a little bit into mud fossils. And David, you've done a show recently on that. There is a Mud Fossil University on YouTube as well that digs into a lot about these mud fossils. But we're starting to find that many of the rock formations that we thought were mountains, or that we thought were just random rocks, or we thought were just structures that people built, have features that look like they are actually fossilized giants and animals of sorts, to the point to where they cut them and they can see where it looks like there's veins and arteries running through the rocks, where it looks like muscle tissue, or where it looks like skin tissue, layers of these things associated with that.
There are many, many, many of these. There's the one, the Devil's Tower out in Arizona, and it looks like a tree stump. I mean, I don't know if it's a tree stump or not, but it looks like a tree stump. And there are so many of these that look like creatures. It's undeniable, that look like giant humans, various animals, and it's beyond the point of, well, if I look at it, it kind of looks like that. No, it looks like it, and what the Bible tells us and many other non-biblical historical sources, that these early giants were huge. They were tall as the cedars, 200 feet. I've come to the point, it's much easier for me to believe that these are fossilized remains of giant humans and animals than to look at it and see just what it looks like and deny what our eyes are seeing. In the 67th chapter of the book of Enoch, and this is something that we have went into detail in this chapter in our book of Enoch commentary, but it says this very thing, that in the place deep in the earth where angels are chained and being punished, that this actually affects the surface of the earth in manifestation of hot sulfur springs. And I'll just read a little of the text for you. In Enoch chapter 67, beginning in verse 5, it says, And I saw that valley in which there was a great convulsion, with the convulsion of the waters. And when all this took place, from that fiery molten metal And from the convulsion thereof in that place there was produced a smell of sulfur, and it was connected with those waters. And that valley of the angels who had been led astray burned, who had led astray mankind, burned beneath that land. And through its valleys proceed streams of fire, where these angels are punished who had led astray those who dwell upon the earth. But those waters shall in those days serve for the kings and the mighty and the exalted, and those who dwell on the earth for the healing of the body. And then in verse 11, it talks about a change that's going to happen prophetically, and probably at the time of the release of the restrainer, when these will be actually going to come back. In verse 11, it says, and those same waters will undergo a change in those days, for when those angels are punished in these water springs shall change their temperature, and when the angels ascend, this water of the spring shall change and become cold.
So what is the fascination of these kings, these churches building over these sites, these bound devils? What is the point of this? And these are a couple temples that were actually built. They were built on top of these old temples. This one on the left here is the Acropolis of Athens. And then you have 1800s revealed beneath the church is the ruins of the Greek temple theater of Dionysus. The Vatican is built over the necropolis, the city of the dead. The people that are doing this do lay a right to these locations, because I do believe that they are either priesthood descendants or physical descendants of Nimrod himself, and they understand that in order for them to understand the secrets and be able to build technology up to a level that it once was, they have to recover these ancient sites, and they have to find the secrets associated, and they have to figure out how these things work. This is out of the book Babylon's Banksters. If you look at these, they're all very similar in the design with the columns. This next one here, this is a modern Megatron here on the left, and on the right is the floor plan of the temple and the palace of the Emperor Diocletian. In order for a radio of sorts, or a transistor, or something to receive information, you have to have the magnetron. And the theory posed in this book, Babylon Banksters by Joseph Farrell, is that these temples acted as sort of a magnetron. They acted as a receiver for shortwave information, long-wave information, and that each temple was associated with a god and had its own frequency associated with that god. And he said that the main gods actually had a continual frequency and not just shortwave. As you guys might be familiar, Rob Skiba interviewed a man about the altars in Jekyll Island. This is a short part of that interview, and it details the idea that Rockefeller and several of his buddies, the most powerful men in the world, formulated the Federal Reserve on Jekyll Island over a baby sacrifice mound.
Top of a blood sacrifice altar. He said, well, Rockefeller was.
I'm here in Jekyll Island, Georgia, one of the most mysterious places in the country. Some call it the Bohemian Grove of the East Coast. This island also holds secrets that are key to unlocking why the world is the way it is today. Behind me is a place called Indian Mound, which is actually home to the Rockefellers, and I'm here investigating a mystery that most people have never heard before. This mystery has been shrouded in secrecy for almost 100 years.
Jekyll Island is where the Federal Reserve banking system was birthed and conceived. And at one time, when it was functioning in the 1900s up to the 20s and 30s, some say 1/3, some say 2/3 of the world's wealth would vacation on that island. Mm-hmm. It was the highest conglomeration of wealth in a single place very often anywhere in the world back in the turn of the century. So it just seems like a little island that's not anything significant at all now, but it's amazing to see the financial side of the history of that spot. And so I'm sitting there looking at some of the things that he's telling, and just thinking about some of the things he's telling me. We went out and walked around, and he showed me some of the cottages that had been restored, and the club itself, and the tennis courts, and they had a pier where the boats would come up, and he's just kind of showing me the grounds, and then we go to the museum. And he's talking a lot about the financial stuff and the guys that built it, and each cottage was, marked and named. Some of them had been restored. Some of them didn't exist anymore, but they had like a sign that this is where this one was, and that one was built by J.P. Morgan. That one was Rockefeller's, and that one was they had each one of them named. Well, they're all kind of native names, and then they're all got some kind of a plaque on who the financial mogul was that had built them, and they're not really elaborate, luxurious mansions. They're just simple cottages for the most part, which was kind of interesting to know that the richest people in the world built them, and they were very low-key and almost like a cabin in the woods instead of a luxurious house like you'd expect. And they all had Indian names. So I started asking him about the Indian history of the island, and he lit up. He just was like, that's what he really wanted to talk about, because he loved the Indian history. And so he takes me back to the museum, and he said, we got a lot of stuff on the Indians. He said this was actually like the government main community for a tribe of Indians that don't exist anymore. That tribe was called the Timucas. And I said, well, that's interesting. My name's Tim. And anyway, I didn't know anything about the Timucas. I'm from Oklahoma. I've learned a lot of native history, and I have some native bloodline, but I did not know anything about the Timucas. So I just asked him, please tell me everything that you can tell me about them. There's something about the natives that I feel like I need to know. So he said, well, the Jekyll Island Club was actually built on top of everything that the Indians had. So they just kind of wiped the village out and built the club on top of it. So wherever the chief's house was, there was a cottage now. Wherever the council house was, there was now the Jekyll Island Hotel. And he said everything that's built and visible today is actually sitting right on top of something that was significant in the Indian village when it existed. So he said the fact that this whole place had to go into ruins and then be rebuilt and become an archaeological state park, he said it actually helped us identify the native history, because the club itself had almost erased that. And so I said, well, let's look at the museum. I want to see some of the Indian stuff. So we're looking at arrowheads and spear tips and, just artifacts that they had found, and pottery shards and things, and seashells that they had. And he showed me all their stuff in the museum. He shows me some fragments of a weapon that was like an unusual bow. And when I say unusual, I mean that it was like a double curved bow. And that was a very unusual shape of a bow for a native tribe. I had never seen that shape before with an American Indian tribe. And I've seen a lot of bows and arrows. So I asked him, I said, this seems unusual. I've not seen this before. In Oklahoma, every native tribe, the bows would look like a single bow or just a single curve. I said, this is quite extraordinary, especially as far back as this tribe was. So he said, yeah, we found a lot of weapon-type artifacts that we've not seen with other tribes. And I said, well, how do you know these were Native Americans? Maybe they were from somewhere else. He said, oh, no. They were the Timucas, because they're well established along the Florida and Georgia coast, and he said we got a lot of stuff in 3 or 4 states about them, and they were quite prolific at one time. So he said, we know they're Native Americans. I said, well, all right, what else you got? He said, well, we got some skeletons. He said, you want to see the bones? And I said, well, yeah. That sounds, you don't get to see a skeleton very often. I said, are they where we can actually see them, or are they buried? He said, no, they're visible. So they had a burial site that they had been very respectful for when they built the museum. When they found a burial site, they didn't move the bones. They left them where they were, and they just uncovered them to where they were visible, and then they built the museum on top of it. They did basically the same thing with the museum that the Jekyll Island guys had done with their houses. they put a piece of plexiglass over the burial site so you could see it, but they were still trying to respect where the bones were and not move them. And so I'm looking at 4 skeletons of the Timucua chiefs. And they knew they were chiefs just from different things that were buried with them. So all of a sudden I look and I realize, man, these guys are really tall. And I commented to the guy that, you know, how tall are these guys? They look unusually large. And he said, yeah, they're all about 8 or 8.5 foot tall. I was like, well, that doesn't seem like a normal Native American, especially the tribes that I'm familiar with. He said all the Timucuas were unusually tall, even the women. And he said we found other skeletons and, you know, parts of bones out in the grounds, and he said we've got pretty good evidence that nearly all of them were extraordinarily tall. And I said, well, what is, you know, how do you explain that in relation to other tribes on the Atlantic coast who were not? He said, I don't know. It is an unusual anomaly. He said, oh, by the way, I've got a painting that you might want to see. It's actually the copy of the original. We've got it under lock and key. But he said, I got a painting that actually shows the Indians from a group of French colonists that came to the United States before it was the U.S. This was right after Columbus. He said that it was the first colony of French folks that came over to try to establish a colony on the coast. And he said they landed in Jekyll Island, and they had some interaction with these Indians, and then they got so appalled by what they saw and witnessed that they fled at night and ended up in San Augustine, Florida, and established that city. So I said, were they the Huguenots who were the French group that established San Augustine? He said, yes. I said, well, I'd like to see that painting then. So he pulls that out. I'm looking at it, and it shows the Indians and all their regalia, and they're dancing around and having some kind of ceremony, and it's got the fire, and it's a typical, either they're having a party or they're having a war scene, and it has some things with the weapons. So I said, gosh, this has got some weapons in it that clearly validates the archaeology that they found. And then I see an altar. And I'm going, I don't know of a Native American tribe anywhere in the country. I know some that had log houses or high places or worshipped, you know, nature in some way or had totem poles or that kind of stuff. But this one has a stone altar, and it looks a whole lot like the one that I had dealt with in the Middle East. And I'm looking at the picture, and I'm going, is this an altar? Is this stone like something they're sacrificing on? Because this guy's holding babies in his hands in this picture. He said, yeah, they're cutting those babies, they're hacking those babies up in that painting. And so when you look at the details, 2 of the shamans or chiefs are holding a baby up by the ankles, and they're whacking their heads off and spilling the blood on this altar. I said, are you sure this is Native Americans and not some kind of colony that came from over there? At that point, then I thought, I believe this is why I'm here. I needed to see this and hear about this. You know, at this point, I'm not that concerned about the financial stuff anymore. I'm wanting to know, where is this altar? And so I asked him, I said, can you take me to this altar? I often pray over these things, and it's very beneficial for the land and for the country and for the people. Can I go to this altar and see it? He said, I can take you to the altar, but you can't see it. And I said, why can't I see it? Is it buried? He said, no, it's not buried, but it has a house built on top of it. I said, who would be crazy enough to build their house on top of a blood sacrifice altar? He said, well, Rockefeller was. You know, I just, like, okay, can we go there? And he said, yeah, it's just a short walk. Come on. And we've actually, you know, I'd already walked by it. So he said, I've got the keys. He said, normally nobody can go in. The way these things are set up, they're historical homes now. The state of Georgia owns the park. They lease out to another group, the hotel, to run, but the houses are maintained on the National Historical Register, and they're part of the state park. So you can't go in any of them without a guided tour or permission, but you can go look in the windows and walk on the porches and walk all around them. And they're set up inside just like they were when they were actually being used back in the 20s and earlier. So we go over there, and he's got the keys, though. So we go into the house, and he takes me into the parlor, and he says, well, I know you're a praying guy, so you probably would like to have a little time to pray. He said, you're standing right on top of the altar right now. This is the room that is built on top of it. He said, I'm just going to go over here and sit down for a few minutes and read the newspaper, and I'll let you pray and do whatever you need to do. The room that they were sitting in when they drew up the entire legislation and plan to pass it that became the Federal Reserve Act. So this was the conception of the Federal Reserve banking system on the parlor sitting on top of a blood sacrifice altar.
It's interesting to me that a lot of very important things take place in temples. This is where the minting of money takes place. This is where, in ancient times, this is where the money was circulate. This is where the revelations of the prophets and the seers and whatever priestesses that they had would come from inside of these ancient places. Columbus wasn't stupid. He'd been to India before. When he said that there were Indians here, he meant Indians. Hindu religion is the Aryan religion. So he wasn't stupid when he said it. There were those people here. You see it in South America. You see the same legends in South America. There's these ruling class people that come and they take control of the primitive people and they become the ruling class.
It beggars the imagination for me to even surmise for a moment that this is coincidental. It is not. And we had the same scenario play out in South America with the Patagonian giants when the Spanish explorers came down there, and basically they instigated an extermination. And it up into the 1800s, they were still tracking down and killing these Patagonian giants. So this is a pattern. These were basically people that came over from a Levant. They were of the Nephilim bloodline, and they were basically practicing Canaanite religion.
Paul Warburg was probably the most important person at this Federal Reserve establishment on Jekyll Island, and he had the knowledge of banking that he practiced in Europe. He was part of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, and he was a representative of the Rothschild banking dynasty in England and France. He was the head of the Warburg Banking Consortium in Germany and in Netherlands. And he is also one of the most wealthiest men in the world at the time. He also called for the founding of the Council of Foreign Relations, the CFR, in 1921. And he also led the creation of the U.S. Federal Reserve and Council of Foreign Relations through IG Farben. American IG was one of the branches. And if you guys remember, IG Farben, they were the ones who supplied the gas for the gas chambers. And they also fueled through financing lots and lots and lots of money the German war machine during World War II. There are also connections to him and his company behind the Bolshevik Revolution. Millions and billions of dollars were dumped by these guys into these. So these are the guys who have been playing the world for a very long time. This is who we're talking about here. When we talk about Babylon, we're talking about these people. The scripture in Revelation even talks about them being the merchants, which we'll discuss that a little bit more, and why that's important, because that's exactly what these so-called Atlanteans that were visiting all over the world teaching people. They were merchants. They were teaching people to be merchants so they could travel from place to place. Solomon had these Phoenicians going 3 years out to get apes and get elephants for them, get peacocks. Had them going to get gold from Ophir, 3 years journey away. So they were traveling the world, setting up little Babylons everywhere they went. We found throughout most of our research, so have other people such as Graham Hancock and people of the sorts, that these locations are sitting astrologically in alignment with several entity stars. And I call them entity stars because they're called entities, and they are representations of angelic entities. Now, the idea of the occult is as above, so below. And so, from what I can gather from reading the information, there's a hidden undertone that these people believe that when they build on top of these locations that are in alignment with the stars above, they are directly over the top of that entity, and they are able to transmit some resonance, some kind of sound, some kind of information, or maybe even pass information from these locations based on the star maps. So it's really interesting as why they chose these locations.
This is where you can literally see these Catholic churches, and you can see the ruins of these pagan temples right underneath it. Yeah. And there are just so many concepts here. And it is so ridiculous to think. And at one time when we were at war with Germany, Paul Warburg was the head of the Federal Reserve, and Max Warburg, his brother, was the head of the central bank in Germany. Yeah. Both of them were just Rothschild employees. Yep. And these ley lines, a lot of it is a natural physical phenomenon that has to do with electromagnetics. And I've talked several times how that I believe that Einstein's physics is just physics for stupid people. But the plasma physics and the concepts underlying Tesla, he found out that if you shoot energy into the ground, you actually get more energy out than you put in. Yeah. And the old echoes of Tesla's earthquake machine. So these things they're part of it is based upon things like electromagnetism, as above, so below, building things on earth that align with the heavenly luminaries. But there's a spiritual dynamic to it too, the actual entity being there. Yeah. You know, this is the dot that connects, that makes this so absolutely profound right there.
In the occult world and in the world of the elites, bloodline matters. It matters greatly in how much magic you have in your blood, how much Anunnaki blood you have. It matters in how much magic you're able to pull off. I'm going to read this, Babylon Banksters. It says, if DNA is such a resonator and transducer of information, which they proved in the earlier chapter that DNA can resonate to certain frequencies, certain DNA resonates to different frequencies differently, okay? So with that in mind, it says, the local field of the physical medium, it stands to reason that some specific genotypes will be more efficient resonators of it than others. We are told in countless ancient texts, from the Bible to the Sumerian epics of the Hindu epics of India, to the legends of the Japanese Yamato peoples, to the legend of Mesoamerican Indians, that at some point of time, lost in the mist of prehistory and the gods, came down and they mingled with men. We hear about that in Genesis 6, siring children of human women. And many of these legends, moreover, these ancient civilized gods were selfly evident white Caucasians. Again, this is a common feature of such myths from Mesoamerica to the South American Incans and even ancient Japanese legends, which is what I was saying earlier. It says, whatever the truthfulness of these claims might be, we have seen that since ancient times an international banking class has constantly aligned itself with the temple. That's a very key importance here. It says, both with a view to giving their financial activities the sanction of the probity of the temple and therefore cloaking their actions, but also with a view to accessing the residues of that lost science and technology and potentially reconstructing and reconstituting it. So it goes on here in this book to talk about this genome project that they're doing that is Rothschilds are in charge of. This is really interesting. And he says here again, the myth of the Rothschilds' descent from Nimrod, himself a product of such intermarriages, if one consults the Sumerian records, suggests that one such banking dynasty is aware of the connection. And it goes on to talk about how they're trying to pull DNA and get everybody's DNA so they can reconstruct that DNA resonance so they can pull all of that information into themselves.
If that being true, it would make one suspicious at some things we've seen of people wanting to have mass databases of human DNA.
Yeah. That would make sense. And I remember when they started
Yeah.
doing that. Do you remember when it was? It was like a advertisement. They just kept on like poking people to do it. Now almost everybody in the world just about that I've talked to has done it at some point, put their DNA in this database. Jasher, it actually kind of describes this as almost like they literally believed that they were going to get up there in the firmament and go towards God. So let's read it. It says, "And King Nimrod reigned securely, and all the earth was under his control. And all the earth was of one tongue and words of union. And all the princes of Nimrod and his great men took counsel together, put Mizraim, Cush, and Canaan with all their families, and they said to each other, Come, let us build ourselves a city, and in a strong tower, in its top reaching heaven, and we will make ourselves famed, so that when we may reign upon the whole world, in order that the evil of our enemies may cease from us, that we may reign mightily over them, and that we may not become scattered over the earth on account of their wars. And they all went before the king, and they told the king these words. And the king agreed with them in this affair, and he did so. And all the families assembled, consisting of about 600,000 men, and they went to seek an extensive piece of ground to build the city and the tower. They sought in the whole earth. So they were looking for whatever ground they were looking. They were looking intently for this place. So they didn't just pick a random spot and say, blah, let's build it here. So it says they went all over the whole earth, and they found none like one valley at the east of the land of Shinar. About 2 days' walk, and they journeyed there, and they dwelt there. And of course, we know what they found there. We have the Anunnaki, the Anakim. We have all of these giants that are in that area right at the time. And it says, and they began to make bricks and burn fires to build the city, and the tower that they had imagined to complete. And the building of the tower was unto them a transgression and a sin. And they began to build it, and whilst they were building against the Lord God of heaven, they imagined in their hearts to war against him and to ascend into heaven. And so in Genesis 11, same story. And they said, Go to, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach into the heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. So they made this tower knowing that there was a chance that they were going to be scattered. And why would they know that they're going to be scattered unless they got information from somebody that this was a possibility of a reset, right? Why would they believe that the reset was possible unless they knew from some other source? And it says, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they began to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. So it says that basically all these people coming together and doing this, nothing's going to be restrained from them, which tells you that there's power in bringing all the DNA of all the people together in the world, right? There's power, and that's why they're wanting to do it again. It says, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. These symbols tell us everything about who we're dealing with, what order is in charge of a nation when we see the symbols. People that are printing money are literally ruling over the kings of the earth who have every bit of God-given power to say, no, not going to do it. But yet they do. Why? This is Isaiah 47. It says, Stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail, thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsel. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, and the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that will come upon thee. Behold, they shall be as stubble, the fire shall burn them, and they shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm them, no fire to sit before it. Thus shall they be unto thee, with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter, none shall be seen. So it talks about the astrologers, it talks about the sorceries, that they're actually able to make rule here. They're able to sit on their throne so long because they have these sorceries. Their power comes from knowledge, right? Their power comes from all of these informations, these secret technologies that they have. And I'm going to call it magic because technology is magic. There's not a whole lot of difference in technology and magic. If you were to take any bit of our technology, if you were to take this and you were to take it back to even the 1700s, you would probably get burned as a witch, right? Because a lot of this information isn't something that humans as normal beings are going to come up with. It takes a specific kind of human to want to make this happen. Most people just want to be happy and left alone. That's 99%. However, there's this 1% of this 1% that just can't have that. They just can't have it. They have to be in control. They have to be the ones who master the resets. They have to be the ones who take the information, displace it, and put you underneath their reign. And I do believe that there have been many resets.
There's some of these pictures that if you go back into the early 1800s in America and in other parts of the world, that these things are unbelievably huge. They would house 20 to 50,000 people. There would be huge graveyards in these places. And, you know, I mean, is there that many crazy people? I mean, we're talking huge.
Yeah.
And one of the theories is, and the farther I go along, the more that I would prescribe to this, is that this is a part of the reset of the Tartarian people, that a lot of the children and the families of the Tartarians were put into these things. And I also believe that a lot of the concept of the star fort, we've talked about that also, that the Tartarian people built these for healing and also literally for protection from these energies that were being directed at them. Now, that might sound wild to a lot of people, but there's a lot of very legitimate reasons why we would come to that conclusion.
We saw in Revelation that the horror of Babylon is actually hated by the 10 kings that were going to rise up in the end times. We see that, and it's starting to play out in front of us right now. If you're paying attention, there's a clear war going on, a clear, at least propaganda war going on between two different groups of people. Page 205 of Babylon's Banksters, it says, but there is another possibility, which I think this is the possibility. This is the only explanation that makes sense to me in light of everything that we've learned. It says the cosmic war. They're preparing for a cosmic war. And the survivors of the once scientifically sophisticated civilizations were ever to reach the pinnacle of scientific power and achievement that would have made an interplanetary war possible. If that is, they were ever to reconstruct the destructive technologies of their hegemony and extend themselves again into space, then they would have quite literally to draw on the full resources of the entire world and to create the wars, conflicts that drove technology achievement forward at a faster than normal pace of development. In this case, they would develop not only secret associations for this purpose, but money and a close association with temples would be the easiest and least technologically sophisticated method to do it. And the political goal would be the same, ever larger empires, eventually to encompass the entire world itself. This is what they're doing. This is why we're seeing a digital money put into place, because through this digital money, they can pool all the resources of the world to fight what they are going to be calling a cosmic war. They don't want to lose to the 10 kings. The Whore of Babylon does not want to lose to the 10 kings. It doesn't want to lose to God. There's a revenge thing going on here. I think they can win. I really, really do. Revelation 18:23. And the light of the candle shall no more be all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by their sorceries were all the nations deceived. We've seen it play out and right in front of us. I believe that our king will win. Everyone will be reckoned for everything that they've done. Nobody's getting away with stuff. They may think they're getting away with it. They may think that they're getting away with all of these things in secret because they're able to fool everybody in the media. They're able to fool everybody in the world. But in the end, we have to have hope that evil will be vanquished and that we will be restored. When you look at the things through the lens of God, the Holy Spirit who guides us into all truth and reveals mysteries to us, these things aren't scary. There's hope at the end of the tunnel. In Jeremiah 51:20-23, thou art my battle axe, and this is talking about against Babylon. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. For with thee I will break in pieces the nations, and with thee I will destroy kingdoms, and with thee will I break in pieces the horse and his rider. And with thee will I break in pieces the chariot and his rider, and with thee also will I break in pieces man and woman. And with thee will I break in pieces old and young, and with thee will I break in pieces the young man and the maid. I will break in pieces with thee the shepherd of his flock, and with thee will I break in pieces the husband and his yoke and of oxen, and with thee I will break in pieces captains and rulers. One day in that glorious time when war breaks out and the evil is vanquished, I hope to be a battle axe, and I hope you guys do too.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up.